Okay, so Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Allahumma alim anfa'na wa anfa'na wa anfa'na innaka anta alim hakim wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So I've been asked because we are going to look at the book inshallah. We're going to look at a few more pages of Imam al-Bouti's book, Al-Insan wa Adalat Life al-Ard, Man and Allah Justice on Earth. But I will take a few minutes of your time at the beginning. So I've been asked to talk about Dhul Hijjah and Hajj. So I'll take about 10 minutes. So what I think I'll do is I'll talk about the significance of it. I'll talk about the significance of it and then talk about the practical side of it. So to start off, there's a hadith that's related to this, where the Messenger of Allah SAW, in his farewell pilgrimage, his last Hajj, he gave a khutbah, and the hadith was, he said, and this is linked to Surah Tawbah ayah 36, where Allah talks about the months of the year. The months of the year are 12, and 4 of them are haram. 4 of them are sacred. So the Messenger of Allah, he said, الزمان كاستدار كهيئة يوم خلق الله السماوات والأرض. And I've got it written here, سنة 12 شهرا منها أربعة حرم. And then 3 of them are consecutive, like Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, Rajab, and Mudar. Rajab Mudar, it's the name of Rajab, which falls between the Jamada and Sha'ban. Now, the key thing here is he says that time has come back full circle. That's what he says. Now, the first meaning of that is that time has been corrected, right? So if you read through Surah Tawbah ayahs 36 and 37, Allah talks about what's called a nasi, which is the playing around with the months, right? And I think Allah calls it a ziyada in kufr, when people start messing around with the months. Because this is what the mushrikun had done. They messed around with the months, and they would try to avoid, or they would try to make the months suit their needs, right? So so if they wanted to fight in a month and the month was sacred, they would just mess around with the months. They would change them around, right? So it wasn't fixed. So the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he did is he put the months back in order, right? And so now the months are back in the right order, and they're following the same pattern, the same calendar that they were supposed to when Allah created the heavens and the earth. So that's the first meaning of this hadith, which is related by Imam Bukhari. But we can take this further. And we can look at how time itself comes around full circle. So for starters, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is now at the end of his life, right? This is his farewell Hijjah, his farewell Hajj. He passed away not long after this, and he's now back in Mecca where he began, because he is, as he says in another hadith, he said, "Ana a'rabukum, I'm the most Arab of you," right? So he has deep roots in Mecca, going back probably 4,000 years, back to Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. He has deep roots in Mecca. That's where he's from. But for the sake of his religion, for the sake of his deen, he migrated to Medina, and he built the community. They built the Muslim Jama'ah, and it built up and it built up and built up. And now he'd come back, right? So, and that's an example of time coming back full circle. He'd gone back to where he was originally from. And there's a lesson in that. There's a lesson in that about Hijrah. There's a lesson about Hijrah. Never ever think that you are too tied to a land that you simply cannot move, because there's no one who is more tied to his or her land than the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was tied to Mecca. So that's something to keep in mind. The second way to look at it, as I just hinted there, is the fact that Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah 127 onwards, that they built this Kaaba, they built this house, and they'd said to Allah, they made dua to Allah, Allah raise up a prophet amongst themselves who will teach them. Right? It goes back to that, and here the Messenger of Allah is the culmination and the fulfillment of that dua. So he comes back to that exact same place, back to the Kaaba, and brings the religion, that way of Ibrahim alayhi salam, back to the people. So time comes back full circle. Time comes back full circle. And then we take it further back to the case of Adam alayhi salam and Hawa coming down from Jannah and settling on earth in that same place. And the fact that the Messenger of Allah reestablishes that deen, and we go back to the way things were. So this is the significance of Hajj. Everything comes back full circle, and we have to think about the context of that Hajj. The months of Hajj start right after Ramadan. There's always wisdoms, like Ramadan is the 9th month. Ramadan is the month of Ramadan, in terms of you're burning your sins, you're cleansing yourself. And then right after Hajj finishes, Shawwal enters, and Shawwal is the first of the months of Hajj. So Shawwal is when you can start preparing for your journey of Hajj. And it all culminates in the main event. And the main event is Arafah, because the Messenger of Allah said, Al-Hajj Arafah. That's the main event, is Arafah. And that's a case where it essentially is a dress rehearsal for the Yawm al-Qiyamah, because everyone, and this is part of the wisdom of the Ihram, is that everyone is equalized on Hajj. On Arafah, like all the men are wearing the same clothes, the women are wearing the same clothes. You can't really tell who is rich, who is poor, who is a king, who is a pauper. You can't really tell. So everyone's just there, and everyone's in the beating sun, because Mecca is a very hot place, right? To give you an example of what Yawm al-Qiyamah was like, and everyone's begging Allah for his mercy and for his forgiveness and begging for rectification. And it happens where? It happens right there at the end of the year, right? Dhul Hijjah is the last month of the year. This is an indication that this is the akhirah, this is the end. This is what happens at the end of after this life. This is what we will have. And then another wisdom that comes out of this, before I move on to the one about Dhul Hijjah, another wisdom that comes out of this is, people complain, and I have a video on my channel which I'll share with you, where it's Imam Fatih Hijazi from the Azhar. He's quoting Imam Sha'rawi talking about this, how a lot of people, and this is what a lot of people do, they go to Mecca first, and then they go to Medina. When they go for Hajj, they go to Mecca first, and they go to Medina. And Mecca is very stressful, right? Because you're doing all these actions of the Hajj, right? There's the Tawaf, there's the Sa'i, there's the Tawaf al-Qudum, there's the Tawaf al-Ifada, there's Arafah, there's going back and forth to Muzdalifah, there's the stoning. It's a very active and busy time, and it's quite stressful, and you have to make sure that, because you're at Ihram, you might not be feeling so comfortable, you have to make sure you're not biting your nails or pulling your hair up, all these kinds of things, right? And then you go to Medina, and Medina, there are no prescribed rites in Medina. Medina is just, you visit the Masjid Ridwan when you're able to, and you just relax. And there's a metaphor there for us, right? Hajj, and this is why again, Imam Sha'rawi talking, it said Hajj is Allah's Jalal. Medina, so that's Mecca, because Mecca is Allah's Jalal, whereas Medina is Allah's Jamal, right? Mecca is Allah's glory, it's Allah's majesty, whereas Medina is Allah's beauty. Medina is Allah's beauty. And if you think of the time frame, it's as if Mecca is like the dress rehearsal for the Day of Judgment, whereas Medina is supposed to remind you of paradise. Because once you get to Medina, you're resting, you're relaxing, you've done the Hajj, you've passed, you've done it now. Now you're in a place of tranquility, you're in a place of rest. There's nothing really there's nothing that you have to do. All you do is just see people, and you visit people, and you visit the Masjid of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing in paradise itself, to see the Masjid of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So that's part of the significance of the Hajj and of this time of year. Now, to go into Dhul Hijjah, to talk about Dhul Hijjah, and again, I shared some things with Saeed today, which he'll share with you, Insha'Allah, if he hasn't already. There's some stuff on my blog. I've translated the section from the Qa'dah of Imam Nawawi, talking about Dhul Hijjah. I've also translated a section from Imam Muhammad Saeed's book, Al-Islam wal-Iman, which is based on Imam al-Bayhaqi's, was it 76 or 66 branches of faith? I forget the name now. but it's based on Imam Bayhaqi's book. But the main hadith is where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu said, "Ma min ayamin al-amal al-salih fihina ahabbu lillahi ta'ala min hadi al-ayam al-ashr." So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu said this related by Timothy. He said, "There are no days in which righteous action is more beloved to Allah the Exalted than these 10 days." It's these 10 days. These are the most beloved of days days to Allah for righteous action. Now, to expand on that, and I'll share this with you as well. You can listen afterwards. I did an audio translation of a khutbah by Imam al-Bouti on this topic, which goes back. It's like 25 years old. This khutbah, but I translated this about maybe 5 years ago. Now, when we think of righteous action this month, yes, obviously, the first things that come to mind is we think, okay, we should do more prayers, we should do more qira'ah of the Quran, we should fast, we should spend more time in the masjid, and these are obvious ones. These are obvious ones. These are all things we should do. It's yes, highly recommended. Like fasting is a beautiful one to do in these 9 days up to Eid. Fasting is a beautiful one because when you fast, you're always in a state of worship, regardless of what you're doing. Right? That's one of the beautiful things about fasting. And no one, and there's actually reward because no one knows you're doing it. And that's why Allah, there's a hadith Qudsi where Allah says, "Let's say I'm li wa ajzi bi." Like fasting is for me and I reward it. Because it's something secret, right? Because you can't, we discuss these things in Ramadan. It's like when you're fasting, no one can look at you and tell that you're fasting, right? As opposed to praying or anything else. But people can see you reciting the Quran. They can see you doing dhikr, right? But they can't see you fasting. But what we tend to forget is that once you step outside the masjid, your ibadah continues and Allah's rulings continue. Allah's rulings follow you. His ahkam follow you. So what you should be seeking to do is to seek Allah's pleasure and to be seeking to worship Allah outside of the masjid as well. So that means at home, with your family, with your wife, with your kids, to be good to them and to make life easier for them and to show them goodness and to spend time with them. It means in the workplace to be good to your colleagues, to be good to your customers, whoever it is, when you're doing trade. Right, because the ahkam follow. Right, you can't be super Muslim in the masjid, and then cheating people and deceiving people, being rude to people when you're trading. And remember, trading, we're always trading, whether you have a business or whether you're just going out shopping. You're trading. That's what it is. That's what the economy is. That's what you're doing. So you want to be good in all your transactions as well, whether your family, with colleagues, with customers, with clients, whoever it is. And also with your friends and your friends. You want to be treating everyone well and treating everyone with justice and everyone with compassion, everyone with mercy. This is another thing that we have to bear in mind when we're trying to draw nearer to Allah and to please Allah these months. So in these 9 days, to really make it special, right? Don't just limit it to what we think of as just the masjid activities or what we think of as worship, right? All of it is worship, right? The ibadah and then mu'amalat, it's all worship. We have to be good to people. And so Imam al-Bouti in his khutbah, he is an example of this. There's a story of Abdullah ibn Mubarak. I'll finish on this point so we can jump into the book. So there's a story of Abdullah ibn Mubarak, the great alim and one of the qadis who was in the Majlis of Imam Abu Hanifa, a brilliant man, brilliant scholar, rahimahullah, where one time he took some people and they actually were engaged in guarding the border. What's called ribat, right? Which is classified as jihad, right? It was when you guard the border. So there was called a thagr. So a thagr is like a weak point in the border, right? It's a weak point in the border. It's because you might have man-made barriers, but you also might have natural barriers. So like there could be a mountain range or it could be a river or something that acts as a solid natural barrier between two countries. Whereas a thagr is like where it's a weak point, right? It could be a narrow point in a river. It could be a passage in a mountain where it's easy for someone to pass. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak and some men were guarding this. They were guarding this thagr at night. Okay. Now, and this is seen as a branch of jihad. So if someone were to be killed while doing this, they would be considered a shaheed al-ma'raka. You're a shaheed of the doing the akhirah, as if you died on the battlefield. So it's a huge maqam. It's a huge maqam. So they were there, they're doing what's called the Salibat, which is a branch of jihad. They're guarding the border. It's middle of the night, and while they're waiting, they're reciting the Quran and they're teaching to each other. They're reciting the Quran. They're talking about it. They're doing tafsir and all these kinds of things. So you think this is just amazing reward, right? You think the reward of being in that state where you're technically a jihad and you're reciting the Quran and it's the middle of the night. So one of the men who was there said to Abdullah Mubarak, he said, is there anyone else out there who's getting the reward that we're getting, that's doing anything better than what we're doing? Now, the truth is probably no, right? The truth is probably no, but Abdullah Mubarak was clever in his answer. He gave a very, very clever answer. And he said, well, yeah, there is someone out there who's getting more reward, right? Who's drawing closer to Allah. And they said, well, who? And he said, it's the man who gets up in the middle of the night to check on his family, to check on his wife and his kids. And he sees that they're cold. So he takes the blanket and he pulls it up over them to make them warm again. And then he goes back to bed. Then he goes back to sleep. Now, again, this is humility from Abdullah Mubarak. Because what he's doing there is he's teaching us two things. He's teaching, number one, no matter how good the deed is you're doing, you don't want to nullify the reward for the good deed by becoming proud of yourself or being what's called ujb, like the self-satisfaction or amazement at yourself. Like, ooh, look at me, look what I've done. I'm so amazing. I'm so awesome. Look what I've done. If you have that attitude, then you're going to nullify the reward. That defeats the objective. Because every good deed you do is only by Allah's ni'mah and Allah's tawfiq and Allah's fadl. Right? That's why Imam Shafi in the Risala, on the very, very first page, he's praising Allah. And he says, praise be to Allah, to the one who, one of his, you could not thank Allah. He says, you could not thank him for one of his blessings, except by another blessing from him, which in turn requires further gratitude. Right? Everything you do for Allah, every good action you do is a ni'mah. It's a ni'mah. So any good deed you do is a ni'mah. That requires further gratitude. You have to thank Allah for your gratitude, because Allah inspired you to show him gratitude. So, so this is the first thing Abdullah Mubarak's reminding these people of, right? He's making sure they don't become big-headed and proud of themselves because of what they're doing. Because no, you have to be humble and realize that it's all from Allah. It's from Allah's tawfiq that you're able to do this right now. To be in jihad and to be reciting the Quran in the middle of the night and so forth. The other thing he's teaching us is that it's ibadah and it's rewardable. Everything you do for creation, anything you do to make things easier and to benefit the creation is rewardable. So whether it's your wife, kids, colleagues, friends, animals, creatures, whatever it is, all these things are beneficial. All these things are rewardable. So in these 9 days, or it was called the 10 days, but leading up to Eid, especially these 9 days leading up to Eid, don't limit yourself to just thinking, oh, it's only prayer, or it's only dhikr, or it's only Quran, or it's only fasting. No, think broad. Think about your mu'amalat. Think about your family. Think about your community. Think about all the ways that you can benefit people and be good to people and lift hardship from people. And with Allah alone is every success. So I'll finish there on the Dhul Hijjah bit, and now I'll jump into the book for about 10 minutes, Saeed?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking at page 81 in the book, and then Samdat Life al-Ard. And we're talking about the logic of love, which again is connected to what we've just been saying. So I will I'll start up by reminding you of a basic thing about the importance of loving Allah. The importance of loving Allah. And I was listening to Imam al-Bouti's lessons on his, because he has a book called Al-Hubb fi al-Quran, Love in the Quran, and it's something that when you think about it, it's like, it's so obvious. Why didn't I put that together myself? That's how it feels. But it's like this. It's a basic thing like this. You have to understand that there's a relationship between the intellect and emotions. Okay, and it's like this. The intellect can show you the way. The intellect can show you this is true, this is false, this is right, this is wrong. But the intellect cannot move you to do something. The intellect will not move you towards the truth or move you towards what is right. That's where the emotions come from, right? Where the emotions come in, right? So the way to think about this is that your intellect is like the headlights on your car, right? The headlights on your car can show you the road ahead. This is the road ahead. That's a tree. That's a hedge. That's a ditch. That's a bush. That's a building. Don't go there. But the headlights do not move the car, right? You need an engine. You need petrol to move the car. That's what the emotions are. The emotions are like the engine or the petrol. That's what moves the car. And this is why it's important to understand the role of love in your relationship with Allah. Knowing that you have to pray, for example, knowing that you have to fast, knowing that you have an obligation is not what is going to move you to carry that obligation. It's your love for Allah that will move you towards carrying that obligation. But we can take it one step back and think about, for example, when we think about in the realm of dawah, when we're giving dawah to people, and I see so many people giving dawah, they get really frustrated because they think that when they're giving dawah to someone, they think, oh, well, if I'm talking to this unbeliever, all I have to do is just show him rationally and logically and intellectually how Islam is true, and then he'll just submit. He'll just become Muslim. The shahada will just fall out of his mouth. And people do this, right? They could go to a university ISOC event and they'll give a big speech and they'll find an unbeliever and say, Islam is true because blah, 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 blah. And this unbeliever will just shrug his shoulders, just go, whatever. Why don't you believe? Whatever. Because he doesn't love Allah. That's why. You've turned his headlights on, but you haven't turned his engine on. Right? it's like a guy who's turning his headlights. You turn your headlights on your car. Have you ever tried moving your car, turning your headlights on? It's like you're not gonna go anywhere. He doesn't love Allah. Right? You have to talk to people about love to get them to actually come to Islam. Now, and this is what we're talking about here, this logic of love. There's a reason why love is so important. And this works the other way around as well, right? I was explaining to some people in Bradford recently, some Bradford University students. They asked me these questions, and I said another thing you're going to face at university. It's not uncommon. Is you will see ridda. You probably will see people who they might be Pakistani like you or Asian like you. You might see them leave Islam. But why? Well, think about this. No one, absolutely no one leaves Islam because they're unconvinced, right? Because they lose conviction. They're rationally thinking about it, thinking, oh, wait, actually, it's not true. No, that doesn't happen. They leave because they don't love Allah, or they love something else more than Allah. So, and the proof is right there in the Quran, because Allah says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, in the 5th chapter, verse 54, Allah says, وَمَنْ يَرْتَدَّ مِنْكُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِي اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. Right? Allah says, whoever amongst you apostates from his faith, leaves his faith, Allah will bring up people who he loves them and they love him. Right? It's love. So Allah is saying they left because they didn't love me. So if people leave this religion, it's okay. I'll bring other people who they'll love me and I'll love them. Right? Allah never says if someone leaves it's because he's stupid and it's okay. I'll bring someone in who's smart. I'll let the imbeciles and the morons and idiots leave and I'll bring some smart people. I'll bring some high IQ people. No, it's love. It's love. These people have some other worldly thing that they love more than Allah. It could be some passion, some desires. It could be wealth. It could be status, reputation, whatever it is. So what Imam al-Bouti talks about here in the logic of love is he says, if you waken your heart to the remembrance of Allah, the exalted, and the sublimity of his various attributes, and you keep remembering it every time the world's desires make it heedless, Now, what he's getting at here is you want to be connecting the ni'am that you see to the mun'im, right? All the blessings that you see, you want to connect them to the bestower of blessings, so that when you're looking around, like when you're doing your dhikr on your, it starts on your tongue. You could be saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and so forth, but you want to start reflecting on the world around you. It's just and not necessarily the vast landscape, just what's in front of you. I have a glass of water, I have a tea, I have electricity, I have a book, I have a car, I have a roof over my head. These are what I just said they are, but they're blessings. These are all blessings from Allah. And so Imam al-Bouti says you want to see that every blessing that you see is going back to Allah. So for example, the perfection that is apparent in the planning of any production or the appearance of any creation is nothing other than a reflection of his attribute of perfection, right? So when you see a building or a car or a message or whatever it is, and you think, wow, that's built so well, it's built so perfectly, it's such an amazing production, such an amazing feat of manufacturing, that's merely a reflection of Allah's perfection. That's merely a reflection of Allah's beauty, right? That's what they talk about beauty, right? He says the beauty that moves your heart and makes your heart flow is nothing more than an effect from the one who brings all beauty into existence, right? Any beauty you see, that goes back to Allah's Jamal. Any knowledge that you have, or the knowledge that you exalt, that goes back to Allah's knowledge. And this is why, again, the Messenger of Allah said in the Hadith related by Imam Tirmidhi, it said, "Hibbullah lima yaghdukum min ni'amihi." Right? Love Allah for the blessings that He nourishes you with. Love Allah for the blessings that He nourishes you with. And if you ever struggle with that, and I've mentioned this in my book, The Big Step, and I've told other people to do this. If you ever struggle with that, the way to build up gratitude and love is what you can do, especially if you feel like you're stressed or you're going through a hard time. At the end of every day, this is just a recommendation. At the end of every day, and I might have told you this guys before, but at the end of the day, what you can do, take out a pad of paper. Don't do it on your phone. It's not really fun. But if you take out a notebook or a pad of paper and a pen or a pencil, and just write down 10 things you're grateful for. Just 10 things you're grateful for. Now, on day one, you talk about the obvious things. Well, I'm grateful for my faith. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful for my house, and so on and so forth. These obvious things. But when you move into the second day and the third day, you have to start thinking, okay, what are like 10 things that happened today that I like? And then you start mentioning, quote unquote, small things. We call little things, right? So-and-so opened a door for me. So-and-so helped me with my shopping. So-and-so helped me download something. So-and-so helped me. You start thinking all these good things that happened to you throughout the day. And that brings you to be grateful to Allah. Like, oh yeah, Allah made that happen today. Oh yeah, Allah made this happen to you. You start seeing Allah in your life, right? So that's something I would highly recommend. Now, so back to that hadith. So Hibbullah lima yaghdukum min ni'amihi. So the love of Allah for the blessing that He nourishes you with. And then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu said, "Wahibbuni bihubbillah," right? And love me by the love of Allah. And love me by the love of Allah. Right? It's all connected. This is why it's important as well that we love the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because what a ni'mah he is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And on the following page. And this is probably a point I'll finish off before I open the floor for just some brief Q&A before Maghrib. Is he talks about once your heart grows in love for Allah, then you're able to deal with the things that Allah sends your way. And I think and he says at the bottom of page 82, it says, indeed is by the nature of the lover to submit happily to what his beloved decrees for him. For by doing so, he's able to express his love for him and his attachment to him. Now, so here's something to think about. And it's a good analogy, and I think there's something really special or something to be said about having children, because children, like having a child. Like first of all, human babies are unique in the sense that when they're born and then for several months, even years, they're helpless. They're pretty much helpless, right? Especially when in the early ones, they're helpless. They can't do anything by themselves. Babies, right? You look at like baby camels or baby goats or baby cows. They can plop out of their mother's stomach and just walk away, start feeding, start doing stuff, right? Like they're not they're born with a degree of independence. Human beings, no. You are completely, as a baby, you are completely and utterly dependent, which is a reminder to us. We as human beings, regardless of our status, our state, or our status, or our wealth, ultimately, we are completely and utterly dependent on Allah. That's a message. That's one thing to think about babies. But number two is, again, think about emotions versus intellect, right? We don't have babies because we rationally believe that we need to carry on the human species. That's not good enough. No. We love our wives love us. We want to have children. And then with children, all the hardship that comes with children, right? The sleepless nights, the changing the diapers, the constant feeding, all these kinds of things. If we were told just on a rational basis to do them, we just exhaust us. We just, yeah, you need to do this to carry on the species and make sure there are more humans. Do it. That's not good enough. But what does Allah do? Allah puts love in our hearts, right? So because you have love in your heart, Allah puts love in your heart for your child, Allah puts love and mercy in your heart for your child, you bear with it. You're patient with it. You're patient with all the time they took up from you, all the changing, the crying in the night, you put up with it because of the love in your heart. It's not rational. It's all the love in your heart. So that again is like a lesson for us to think about how when you love Allah, because again, if you love your child, you love your baby, you'll put up with whatever your baby does. So then take it to the higher level. If you love Allah, then you'll bear with whatever Allah sends your way. That's how it should be, because you love Allah, and you start to see that when Allah sends you tests and tribulations, what is it really about? It's about Allah bringing you closer to Him, right? To bring you into a state of dua, into a state of submission, into a state of turning to Him and loving Him, because maybe He wants to hear your voice. So that's something to bear in mind. So Inshallah, we'll continue with page 83 next one, Inshallah. But I'll open it because is it 10 minutes to Maghrib?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just open the floor then quickly for Q&A, and then I'll let you guys wrap up for Maghrib, Inshallah. Alhamdulillah.